When I factor trinomials, I like to use a multiply, add, multiply method. So the first two numbers have to multiply to get 7. The last two numbers have to multiply to get 12, but my loops have to add to get 25. So recall, when you factor trinomials, you're going to have your double parentheses. And you're thinking to yourself, what multiplies to get 7x squared, which in this case is only a 7x and an x. So that makes this one a little bit nicer. What multiplies to get 12? Well, you've got options. 12 times 1, 6 times 2, or 3 times 4. And we're going to just trial and error until we can get our loops. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's say we try 6 and 2. All right, let's check our loops. You're going to say 6 times x is 6x. And you're going to say 7 times 2 is 14x. And then you ask yourself, is there any way to make these two numbers, 6 and 14, add or subtract to get a 25? And there's not. So obviously, I don't want the 6 and the 2. So let's reverse it and maybe try a 2 and a 6. All right, let's check those loops. 2 times x is 2x. 7 times 6 is 42. And again, I ask myself, is there any way to make a 2 and a 42 get a 25 when you add or subtract? And there's not. So I don't want the 6 and the 2's, so let's try some other combinations of numbers. Why don't we try the 4's and the 3's? So I'm going to try 4 and a 3, and if this doesn't work, I'll flip it and try 3 and 4. All right, let's check our loops. 4 times x is 4x, and 7 times 3 is 21x. And then I ask myself, is there any way to make a 4 and a 21 get to 25? And there is. If I add them, if I make it a plus 4 and a plus 21, that will give me a positive 25. Now, I always recommend that you do the signs down here first and then kick them back up to the problem. This one right here will go in your first parentheses. This one right here will go in your second parentheses. You also want to quickly check that positive times positive does multiply to give a positive 12. Now, you can check your answers, and I'll show you only on this first one the relationship between this and this right here. And here's how you can check it. You check it using your FOIL method, or to distribute. So if I take the 7x plus 4 and the x plus 3, that was my answer, and I FOIL or distribute. I like to distribute. Same thing, I just call it distribute. So this right here, the 7x is going to distribute through the parentheses. 7x times x is 7x squared. 7x times 3 is 21x. Now the 4 says, okay, my turn. Now I'll distribute through the parentheses. 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 3 is 12. Collect your like terms. 7x squared, 21 plus 4 is 25x plus 12. Basically, your loops are the outsides and the insides on the FOIL method. And you can see that this checks with the original. Again, I won't check every problem, but I wanted you to know the relationship between the two and give you a way to check if you want to check your problems. Okay, let's take a look at the second example. All right, we're going to MAM, so we're going to multiply, add those loops, and multiply. So the only things that multiply to get 2 are 2 and 1. So you got to have a 2w and a w. Now, to get 55, we could say 55 times 1 or 11 times 5. I'm going to use the 5s and the 11s or 11 and 5s. So let's say I say a 5 here and an 11 here. Check those loops. That's going to be 5, and 2 times 11 is 22. There's no way to make a 5 and a 22 get to a 21. So obviously I don't want the 5 and the 11. I must want the 11 and the 5. Let's check our loops. 11 times W is 11W. 2 times 5 is 10W. And I can make an 11 and a 10 get to be a negative 21 if I make them all be bad guys. I need 21 bad guys, so let's do 11 bad guys and 10 bad guys to total up to a negative 21. Kick your signs back up. This one goes in the first one, and this one goes in the second. Now, let's also double check, because negative times negative multiplies to give me a positive 55. Okay, example 3. Again, we want to multiply, add, multiply. So let's think of the things that multiply to give me 14. I could say 14 and 1 or 7 and 2. Let's think of the things that multiply to give me 15. 15 and 1 or 5 and 3. When I'm trying my possibilities, a lot of times I'll go for the middle of the road numbers, unless this number's really, really large, and I think I need my larger numbers to get that combination. So I'm going to try the 7n and the 2n, and if I'm wrong, I can always just erase and try again. But let's try the 7 and the 2, and I think again I'm going to kind of try the 5s and 3s like the middle of the road numbers. So if I try 5 and 3, let's check loops. 5 times 2 would be 10. 7 times 3 is 21. There's no way to make a 10 and a 21 get to 23. So instead of 5 and 3, maybe we should reverse it and say 3 and 5. Check your loops. 2 times 3 is 6. 7 times 5 is 35. And there's no way a 6 and a 35 can be 23 either. So it looks like I did need the 15 and the 1s. So we're going to try the 15 and the 1. If this doesn't work, I'll reverse it and do 1 and 15. All right, let's check the loops. 15 times 2 is 30n. 7 times 1 is 7n. And sure enough, we can make a 30 and a 7 give us a combination to add or subtract to 23. Now, we need to subtract them in order to get 23, but we need to make sure that the positives win. So we need to have 30 take away 7. Kick your signs back up to the problem. So that'll be a positive 30 and a negative 7. And then check your signs. Positive times negative does multiply to give me negative 15. Okay, let's take a look at example 4. Notice in example 4 you have this negative out front. Well, nobody likes to factor with negatives. Even math teachers, we generally don't like to do that either. So first, let's factor out that negative. It just makes your life a little bit easier when you're trying to work the problem. So I'm going to take a negative 1 and factor that out. So I have negative 8 divided by negative 1 makes it a positive 8a squared. Negative 13 divided by negative 1 is a positive 13. 6 divided by negative 1 is a negative 6. Now I'm ready to do the multiply, add, multiply thing. So just bring this negative with you. Then multiplying to get 8, we could use 8 and 1s or 4s and 2s. For 6, it could be 6 and 1 or 3 and 2s. And then let's just do some trial and errors. Typically, I tell you that I would try the 4a and the 2a. But if I do that combination, it's not going to work. So the 4 and the 2 doesn't work with any of those. So we do need to actually do the 8a and the a on this one. So let's try some combinations of numbers. Let's try maybe the 2 and the 3 and see if this works. So 2a, 8 times 3 is 24. That's not going to get me to 13. So instead of 2 and 3, let's try the 3 and the 2. If that doesn't work, then we'll go for the 6s and the 1s. Check these loops. 3 times a is 3a. 8 times 2 is 16. And sure enough, I can make those get to be 13 if I have positive 16 take away 3. Kick your signs back up. That negative goes in the first parenthesis, and that bottom goes in the second. Also, a negative times a positive multiplies to get a negative. Okay, let's take a look at example 5. In example 5, I'm looking at this problem, and I notice that there is a greatest common factor that I can take out of the problem. So I see that everybody has a number, in this case, an 8 that could be taken out of each term. So let's take out an 8. 24 divided by 8 is 3m squared. Negative 32 divided by 8 is negative 4m. And then 8 divided by 8 is 1. And now we're ready to multiply, add, and multiply. You can see that taking out the greatest common factor made this problem much easier, because now the only things that multiply to get 3 are 3 and 1. As before, if I don't take that out, I would have lots of combinations to try. The only things that multiply to get 1 are 1. So 1 and 1, check loops. 1m, 3 times 1 is 3m, and they need to add to get negative 4. So they all need to be negatives, bad guys. 1 bad guy and 3 bad guys is 4 bad guys. Kick those signs back up. Also see that a negative times a negative multiplies to get a positive. Let's take a look at example 6. In example 6, notice that you have double letters. I have x's and y's to give me xy's. Still factor it just like you're used to trying to get your combination of numbers. Multiply, add, and multiply. So the things that multiply to give me 6 are 6 and 1 or 3 and 2. And for 20, it could be 20 and 1. It could be 10 times 2 or 5 times 4. And if you want to, pause the video and try it on your own and then come back and check to see how you did. So as I'm doing this, I realize I need the 3x and the 2x. And then I'm going to try my numbers, and I believe we're going to want the 5 and the 4. So if I put the 4, and it's going to be a 4y and a 5y, because if this is y squared, I need y's here as well. Check your loops. That's going to be 8xy. That's going to be 15xy. And you ask yourself, is there any way to make an 8 and a 15 get to be a 7? And there is if I subtract them. However, my middleman says the positives need to win this battle. So I need positive 15, take away 8. Kick your signs back to the problem. So the negative goes in the first one, and this bottom, which happens to be positive, goes in the second one. Double checking those last signs, negative times positive does multiply to get a negative. All right, let's look at example 7. And this is one where we want to factor out the negative. So I want to factor out the negative, and I also want to take out a greatest common factor when I'm doing that as well. So I'm looking to see what numbers go into 8, 46, and 30, which is a 2. So take a negative 2 out first, and if you want to, pause your computer and check with me. So that's going to give me a negative divided by a negative is a positive 4x squared. A negative divided by a negative is going to give me a positive 23. And then a negative divided by a negative is a positive 15. So that should have been your first step. All right, now you're ready to ma'am. All right, so now that you've done that, pause the computer again and see if you can come up with a combination of numbers that multiply to get 4, multiply to get 15, but your loops will get you 23. All right, your combination of numbers could have been 4 and 1 or 2 and 2. Here, 15 and 1 or 5 and 3. The ones that I hope you chose were 4x and x. Now, you might have been tempted, and I don't blame you, I might have been too. You might have tried that 2 and 2 first, but in this time we actually needed the 4 and the 1. Then we need a 3 here and a 5 here. Let's check loops. 3x, 4 times 5 is 20x, and sure enough, a 20 and a 3 can give me those loops to add to get 23. They both need to be positive. Kick those signs back up to the problem, and positive times positive multiplies to get my positive. Last one right here. So we're going to multiply. Loops need to add and multiply. Now make sure you check for a greatest common factor. If there was one, I certainly would want to do that, but I don't have that option here. So pause the computer, try it on your own, and come back and check with me. All right, so your possibilities are 1 times 55 and 5 times 11. For 12, we could say 12 and 1, 6 and 2, or 3 and 4. For the 55, I hope you tried a 5x and an 11x. For the 12, you got several options. Maybe we could try the 3 and the 4, and let's just see what happens. That's 33. 5 times 4 is 20. There's no way to make a 33 and a 20 get to 52. Close, but not exact. So instead of that, let's try it the other way. That was a 3 and a 4. So now let's try the 4 and the 3 and see if this works. So that's going to be 44 for that loop. And 5 times 3 is 15. That's also not going to give me a 52. So what we really need is the 6's and the 2's, or the 2's and the 6's. So let's try this way. Hopefully you put a 2 here, a 6 here. You checked your loops. 2 times 11 is 22. 5 times 6 is 30. And I feel really good about that combination getting me to 52. Now, I need a negative 52. So I need all of the signs to be negative. You need 22 negatives and 30 negatives to give you 52 negatives. Kick those signs back up to the problem. This one goes in the first one. The bottom goes in the second. Then double check. Negative times negative multiplies to give me positive 12. If you need more practice, you could look at my teaching video on this topic. There you can see me work and explain more examples. Secondly, if this video was helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel. It allows me to grow the channel so I can put out more videos to help you. See you next time.